Today on Exploring Scotland's History, we're at our first stop, which is in Glasgow, Sighthill Cemetery. The graves of the great and good, I suppose, though a lot of them were tea merchants, so I'm not so sure. We are here primarily to discuss what is probably one of the most cruel times in Scotland's history. More so cruel because it was hidden and not discussed for so very, very long, and not even discussed in schools until recently. Welcome to Exploring Scotland's History. And this large monument behind me is what we have come to see. This memorial is for John Baird and Andrew Hardy, who fought for the rights of the common man 200 years ago, along with James Purley Wilson. John Baird was a weaver brought up in the village of Condorrat, which has really been swallowed up by Cumbernauld now. He served in the British Army and saw action in both Argentina and Spain, but that's not what we know him for. Baird, Wilson and Hardy were the three men executed in Stirling, hanged and beheaded for their part in the Battle of Bonnymuir in 1820, and it was part of the Radical War. I will put a link up at the end to another video I did on the Radical War, the Greenock end of things, but for now we're going to look at the Glasgow Falkirk end of things. The previous year, a peaceful demonstration in Manchester had led to the Peterloo Massacre, which was the name given to the horrific actions of the British Army when they charged cavalry through innocent men, women and children, killing many. Tensions were rising, understandably so. The rich were getting richer, the poor were getting more destitute, and there didn't really seem to be any let up in it. What followed were massive worker strikes, and that didn't make a change either. That's when a group of weavers, led by Baird and Hardy, came up with a plan. They were going to march on Falkirk and take over the Carron Ironworks. It was prolifically making cannonballs at that stage, but they thought that would be a good sign to start the revolution that they felt the workers really needed. But the best laid plans are usually fraught with issues, and this one had the unfortunate issue of government spies infiltrated into the band of weavers, and of course the spies were handing information back to the powers that be. I would suggest they were very handsomely rewarded for their spying as well. They were caught at Bonnymuir and they never got as far as the Carron Ironworks. It was the Prince of Wales 10th Hussars who caught up with them. The local yeomanry horsemen were also involved, though they had a harder passage to Bonnymuir since they got stoned and booed on their way through the town. Baird's military career certainly helped at this stage. He rallied the troops and got them down into a ditch to wait for the cavalrymen, but it wasn't long before they were among them, and they did mercilessly ride them down. Unlike Peterloo, Bonnymuir did not have any loss of life, but many men were arrested and taken prisoner. Baird and Hardy were arrested, accused of high treason and found guilty. It is said that They really remained dignified, well-mannered and calm during the trial. On the 8th of September 1820, they walked to their fate. 6,000 people came to see the unfortunate spectacle. They would have witnessed 2 noose beside each other, 2 coffins beside each of the noose for the bodies, and 2 baskets filled with sawdust for those poor men's heads. A local newspaper at the time did report an excessive amount of military about the hanging site. There was no incident. However, the headsman was called a murderer repeatedly by the crowd. Hardy and Baird were buried in Stirling, and they received their royal pardon in 1835. Here lie the slain and mutilated forms of those who fell and fell like martyrs true, faithful to freedom through a time of storms. They met their fate as patriots always do, despising death, which ne'er can noble souls subdue. Many were shipped out to the colonies. They were given a royal pardon, but many didn't return. During the erection of this monument, the committee applied to Her Majesty's government for permission to remove the mortal remains of the 2 martyrs from Stirling to this spot. Sir, I have laid the memorial for the relatives of Andrew Hardy and John Baird before Secretary Sir George Grey, and I have the satisfaction of informing you that if the Kirk Session of Stirling see no objections upon other grounds, opposition will not be made on the part of the government to the removal of the remains of these unfortunate men from their present place of interment. That was from Andrew Rutherford. In accordance with these instructions, the exhumation took place at an early hour of the morning of the 20th of July 1847, and the remains reinterred in front of this monument on the same day in presence of a considerable assembly of friends. Here then they rest, and far in future years shall freedom dew this spot with memory's tears. Just beside the Baird and Hardy Memorial is one for Seamus McGovern, a historian, author and activist whose ashes were placed here in 1987. I imagine I've probably accessed his stuff if he was an 1820 historian. Rest in peace. The Battle of Bonnymuir, however, would have far-reaching repercussions. 3 days later, 5 of the prisoners were en route to Greenock to go to the prison lair when they were met by a rather angry mob. I'll put a link to that video now. James Wilson was also hanged and beheaded. Reports say that he said to his executioner on the day of his hanging, "Have you ever seen such a crowd as this, Thomas?" He was probably quite surprised how many people came to support him in his final hours. Those who didn't hang were transported to the colonies. The Scottish Reform Act, Glasgow, 1832, will get its first Member of Parliament for the very first time. Change was happening. Change is very slow. These men were sentenced to death for publicly demanding their own political rights and everyone around them. A lot of people say they're martyrs, and I would tend to agree. I feel the radical war is something that we should really learn for today. It shouldn't be a glimpse into a horrific historical past, because there's people still getting downtrodden for the betterment of the rich. and maybe we need to start making things more equal. That's my view, of course. Have your own. That was a glimpse into our not so pleasant past. If you did enjoy the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow. I would like to thank everyone who supports me on the Ko-fi page. It allows me to sneak out for the odd day or two and roam around beautiful places like this. Unusual places like this. I can't believe the size of this cemetery. So until next time, thank you for watching Exploring Scotland's History.